Welcome, dear friends. Thanks for joining me down the rabbit hole. By now, I'm sure you've heard that Gwen Brown has started her own YouTube channel. She's the daughter of Christine and Cody Brown, and she's speaking out openly and honestly about how she feels about the Sisterwives show. It's interesting because it turns out most of the kids don't watch the show. And they don't always know all of what's going on with their parents in their personal lives and the relationships featured on the show.
My name is Gwen Brown. I'm the daughter of Cody and Christine Brown from Sisterwives.
That makes sense, right, when you think about it. When you have 20 plus kids scattered throughout multiple states and multiple wives, of course, you're not going to be fully in touch and engaged with each individual child. But I get the feeling it's worse than that with the Brown family.
As somebody who's not really part of an FLDS community anymore, especially as somebody who's on the entire other spectrum of that, being queer and autistic.
So, if you haven't found it yet, click on Gwen's new YouTube channel below and check out her video. She reviews one of the latest episodes of Sisterwives from season 17, and I'm going to share some of the parts I found most interesting here.
And also not being married to a man with multiple other wives. And then we don't talk about this much, but being kind of a subject in a reality television,
First and foremost, so interesting to hear Gwen address her diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum. Why was this never addressed on the show? Wow, it would have been so nice and educational to watch the family deal with the diagnosis and hear what they think about raising a child with some kind of a special need. Now wait, I know. I certainly know they probably would have faced criticism if they had divulged their child's personal information on TV like that, I guess. So I'm sure it was like a difficult choice to be open about it if they did get the diagnosis when she was younger. I get that. Maybe it's best that it wasn't addressed and that they allowed Gwen to go down her own path and disclose her own diagnosis when she felt like doing so. That's another parenting win for Christine. Am I right? Or maybe Gwen was never officially diagnosed. That's interesting as well. I'd love to know more about how she came to identify with the diagnosis of autism and how it was or wasn't handled within her family structure. It's interesting because Robyn Brown chose to identify her eldest son, Dayton, as having autism super early on when he first entered the family and they started on the show. Okay. So secondly, important to note that Gwen is up front, that she's no longer identifying as FLDS, and she clearly isn't a polygamist. She identifies as queer. And not much is too surprising here. We've heard all of this before. I've heard rumors that as of yet, none of the children from Mary, Christine, or Janelle identify as being part of the AUB or as a polygamist. So, on the YouTube channel, she watches season 17, episode 2, and the people on the show are dealing with COVID diagnoses in this episode. And Gwen's basically like, everyone did really well with their COVID and ended up being fine, so it's all good. And then the episode moves on to Robyn talking about how the other wives complain about Cody not coming over. But Robyn says, he leaves here, he leaves my home, and he goes somewhere. He goes to their houses.
It's weird when wives are like, where are you? What are you doing? And I'm like, he's going.
He's going.
So Robyn's like kind of washing her hands of it. He leaves here, so, I'm doing my part. And this is where Christine chimes in, and Gwen agrees that there's a difference between coming over and actually being present with your family and involved. So Gwen just kind of uses body language and nods her head to agree with this. And she does appear a little disgusted when Christine talks about Cody not showing up for Isabel's surgery. And she gets it. She's like, that really sucks that her dad wasn't around for Isabel. Overall, Gwen's actually super positive and supportive of both parents. And she's basically like, look, when my dad makes his points on this show, I get it, and I kind of feel like I'm on his side. But when my mom makes her points, I can't help but fully get what she's saying as well. On Gwen's other social media, she's spoken out and made comments about how her dad has no sympathy or remorse for how he's treated the rest of the family outside of Robyn and her kids. Gwen said that as a family, they do not openly discuss the issues with Robyn. They kind of just sweep everything under the rug and move forward without talking about it. Okay, so one thing I find super, super interesting about this video is that Gwen addresses some stuff about her mom. She says that back in the day, Christine, Gwen's mom, was actually a really hot commodity in their church. And you know I've heard this rumor before and addressed it in some of my older videos. So, allegedly, Christine was highly sought after because her family was considered AUB royalty, and Cody actually addresses this in a Sisterwives episode, stating that he fell in love with Christine's pedigree over everything else. Yeah, in the past I've read that Christine was kind of considered like a gift to Cody's family because of her standing in the church, and also because she was acting as kind of like a buffer of positive influence over Mary and Janelle, who were at odds at times before she entered the family.
It's hard to see just such a contrast with Cody, how he is at Robyn's house versus how he is at my house. He's just disengaged at my house.
Lastly, Gwen lets us know that she was really happy and excited when Christine told her she was going to leave Cody and move home to Utah. Basically, Gwen explains that her mom is super outgoing and loves being around people and making a ton of friends, and that wasn't really happening for her living out in Arizona near Coyote Pass. Gwen was so excited at the thought of her mom moving back to Utah and rejoining a community she can really thrive in.
Cody's been at my house a lot just by default because of the decisions that other wives are making.
What?
To me, a lot of what Gwen is sharing with us has to do with the fact that she loves both her parents and she cares a lot for both of them. She wants to see both of their points of view, but ultimately she feels that her mom wasn't happy or her best self or thriving when she was married to her dad and living in Arizona.
I think I still see my mom more than I see my dad, even when she lives in Utah. At least polygamy brought Janelle and my mom to be besties.
And then Gwen goes on to answer some great questions from her patrons. She has a Patreon where you can pay to submit questions and kind of chat back and forth with her. And here's some clips of what she has to say.
All right, and now is the time for the burning questions that my patrons on Patreon ask me every single episode. The first one is from the Robyn and Cody stopped being active on social media a while ago. Are they aware of how most people perceive them and their behavior on the show?
So Gwen says that Cody and Robyn are very aware of how they're perceived by the public in a negative light because of the show. Now, in my opinion, this isn't what she says, but I really don't think it's of utmost importance to them as long as they're making money. And to be honest, all of the controversy this season with Christine leaving has brought in the most money for that family. And I think it's made it more concrete of an idea that they will continue on with the show, at least for a few more seasons, because it's so popular. Gwen ends up making the argument that Cody and Robyn are honestly probably just too busy, especially Robyn would be too busy with her kids and being a mom, to focus too much on the social media hate. And she says that's also likely why they aren't on social media as much. Again, I have to say it's really sad to me how removed Gwen seems from knowing what's really going on with her dad's life right now. I mean, she's still pretty young. She recently left home and she's in college. So she's still in a stage where I think a lot of people are still pretty close or somewhat entwined with their parents. And it seems like she's living very much at a distance, especially from Cody. I assume, that could partially be because of her personality, her choices. But then also I do feel like it has a lot to do with the fact that Cody has multiple families and he very much continues to devote himself to the younger children and kind of saying screw you to the older kids, my opinion. One thing that Gwen says that really surprised me is she talks about how she thinks all of the hate on social media towards Mary Brown is not justified. She says she doesn't know that much about it because she's not like following the show or following what people have to say online, but she's recently learned that people are very negative towards Mary and she doesn't see any reason for that. She also addresses her current relationship with her dad and basically says that she feels like she's kind of chasing him down to spend time with him. But she does feel like he's improving in certain ways. There are things that he's working on. She says, like all of us, he can be blind to his mistakes. I just really feel like overall she takes a very neutral stance in many ways. She does say at times he can be difficult to deal with and even scary. One of the funniest parts of the video is towards the end when Gwen starts talking about being an empath. And I brought this up in one of my recent videos that Robyn had been all over Pinterest talking about how she's an empath and life can be really difficult for her because she has these empathic abilities. And basically Gwen went on to say, like, when someone quote unquote says that they're an empath, it just really reminds me of when someone goes around saying that they're very popular. Like, you wouldn't really need to say you are something if you really are something. People just know it. But when you're constantly putting it out there into the universe, letting everyone know, making a big deal about it, like, are you just doing it for the attention? Isn't that kind of the opposite of what an empathic person would do? So I found that very on point with what I think many of us feel about Robyn's constant statements about all her empathy.
I do feel less about Robyn from watching this, but I feel like that's not very fair from me because I don't really like her as a person. So it's probably not a completely valid response, but like watching her makes me like her less for sure. In this episode, Robyn does point out that he's like more ill-tempered as the question mentions, and he's meaner and kind of scarier. So I imagine that she's not getting like the same princess treatment, but I'm sure she's still receiving more and kinder attention from him.
But I'm really excited to see more from Gwen's channel. I think overall it's just like a very balanced and kind look at what's going on behind the scenes of Sisterwives. I do think Gwen definitely comes at all of this in a place of really caring about everyone involved. So whereas you and I might be more critical of the situation, I think she tries to see everyone's point of view, and that is really fun and neat to watch and kind of get like a different perspective of someone who is truly invested in these people. All right, what do you guys think? Have you watched Gwen's video? Can you leave me some comments below? What do you think is coming up next in the remaining episodes of the Sisterwives finale? For now, I'm glad that I was able to take some time to spend with you, and thanks for joining me down this rabbit hole. Hope to see you again next time.
That's why I have a nanny, so that I can have her help me instead of trying to ask Cody to help with the kids. It's not really fair of me to ask him to help when he has so many responsibilities.
I mean, to be fair, he's still a father. He's still part of the